But passing along a narrow path through a clump of cottonwoods, some object brushed against my legs, and I stumbled and nearly fell. I looked with sudden anxiety at Paul. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Tripping over your own feet?" I kept my tongue between my teeth and plodded on, though sore perplexed and thoroughly satisfied that some acute and mysterious malady had attacked my nerves. So far my eyes had escaped, but when we got to the open fields again, even my vision went back on me. Strange flashes of vari-colored rainbow light began to appear and disappear on the path before me. Still, I managed to keep myself in hand till the vari-colored lights persisted for a space of fully 20 seconds, dancing and flashing in continuous play. Then I sat down, weak and shaky. "It's all up with me," I gasped, covering my eyes with my hands. "It has attacked my eyes, Paul. Take me home." But Paul laughed long and loud. "What did I tell you? The most wonderful dog, eh? Well, what do you think?" He turned partly from me and began to whistle. I heard the patter of feet, the panting of a heated animal, and the unmistakable yelp of a dog. Then Paul stooped down and apparently fondled the empty air. "Here, give me your fist." And he rubbed my hand over the cold nose and jowls of a dog. A dog it certainly was, with the shape and the smooth short coat of a pointer. Suffice to say, I speedily recovered my spirits and control. Paul put a collar about the animal's neck and tied his handkerchief to its tail, and then was vouchsafed us the remarkable sight of an empty collar and a waving handkerchief cavorting over the fields. It was something to see that collar and handkerchief pin a bevy of quail in a clump of locusts, and remain rigid and immovable till we had flushed the birds. Now and again the dog emitted the vari-colored light flashes I have mentioned. The one thing, Paul explained, which he had not anticipated, and which he doubted could be overcome. "They're a large family," he said, "these sun dogs, wind dogs, rainbows, halos, parhelia. They are produced by refraction of light from minerals and ice crystals, from mist, rain, spray, and no end of things, and I am afraid they are the penalty I must pay for transparency. I escaped Lloyd's shadow, only to fetch up against the rainbow flash." A couple of days later, before the entrance to Paul's laboratory, I encountered a terrible stench. So overpowering was it that it was easy to discover the source: a mass of putrescent matter on the doorstep which in general outlines resembled a dog. Paul was startled when he investigated my find. It was his invisible dog, or rather what had been his invisible dog, for it was now plainly visible. It had been playing about but a few minutes before in all health and strength. Closer examination revealed that the skull had been crushed by some heavy blow. While it was strange that the animal should have been killed, the inexplicable thing was that it should so quickly decay. "The reagents I inject into its system were harmless," Paul explained, "yet they were powerful, and it appears that when death comes they force practically instantaneous disintegration. Remarkable, most remarkable. Well, the only thing is not to die. They do not harm so long as one lives. But I do wonder who smashed in that dog's head." Light, however, was thrown upon this when a frightened housemaid brought the news that Gaffer Bedshaw had that very morning, not more than an hour back, gone violently insane, and was strapped down at home in the huntsman's lodge, where he raved of a battle with a ferocious and gigantic beast that he had encountered in the Ticklorn pasture. He claimed that the thing, whatever it was invisible, that with his own eyes he had seen that it was invisible, wherefore his tearful wife and daughters shook their heads, and wherefore he but waxed the more violently, and the gardener and the coachman tightened the straps by another hole. Nor, while Paul Ticklorn was thus successfully mastering the problem of invisibility, was Lloyd Inwood a whit behind. I went over in answer to a message of his to come and see how he was getting on. Now his laboratory occupied an isolated situation in the midst of his vast grounds. It was built in a pleasant little glade, surrounded on all sides by a dense forest growth, and was to be gained by way of a winding and erratic path. But I have traveled that path so often as to know every foot of it, and conceive my surprise when I came upon the glade and found no laboratory. The quaint shed structure with its red sandstone chimney was not, nor did it look as if it ever had been. There were no signs of ruin, no debris, nothing. I started to walk across what had once been its site. This, I said to myself, should be where the step went up to the door. Barely were the words out of my mouth when I stubbed my toe on some obstacle. pitched forward, and butted my head into something that felt very much like a door. I reached out my hand. It was a door. I found the knob and turned it, and at once, as the door swung inward on its hinges, the whole interior of the laboratory impinged upon my vision. Greeting Lloyd, I closed the door and backed up the path a few paces. I could see nothing of the building. Returning and opening the door at once, and all the furniture, every detail of the interior were visible. It was indeed startling, the sudden transition from void to light and form and color. "What do you think of it, eh?" Lloyd asked, wringing my hand. "I slapped a couple of coats of absolute black on the outside yesterday afternoon to see how it worked. How's your head? You bumped it pretty solidly, I imagine." "Never mind that," he interrupted my congratulations. "I've something better for you to do." While he talked he began to strip, and when he stood naked before me he thrust a pot and brush into my hand and said, "Here, give me a coat of this." It was an oily shellac-like stuff which spread quickly and easily over the skin and dried immediately. "Merely preliminary and precautionary," he explained when I had finished. "But now for the real stuff." I picked up another pot he indicated, and glanced inside, but could see nothing. "It's empty," I said. "Stick your finger in it." I obeyed, and was aware of a sensation of cool moistness. On withdrawing my hand I glanced at the forefinger, the one I had immersed, but it had disappeared. I moved, and knew from the alternate tension and relaxation of the muscles that I moved it, but it defied my sense of sight. To all appearances I had been shorn of a finger, nor could I get any visual impression of it till I extended it under the skylight and saw its shadow plainly blotted on the floor. Lloyd chuckled. "Now spread it on, and keep your eyes open." I dipped the brush into the seemingly empty pot and gave him a long stroke across the chest. With the passage of the brush the living flesh disappeared from beneath. I covered his right leg, and he was a one-legged man defying all laws of gravitation. And so, stroke by stroke, member by member, I painted Lloyd Inwood into nothingness. It was a creepy experience, and I was glad when naught remained in sight but his burning black eyes, poised apparently unsupported in mid-air. "I have a refined and harmless solution for them," he said. "A fine spray with an air brush, and presto, I am not." This deftly accomplished, he said, "Now I shall move about, and do you tell me what sensations you experience." "In the first place, I cannot see you," I said, and I could hear his gleeful laugh from the midst of the emptiness. "Of course," I continued, "you cannot escape your shadow, but that was to be expected. When you pass between my eye and an object, the object disappears, but so unusual and incomprehensible is its disappearance that it seems to me as though my eyes had blurred. When you move rapidly I experience a bewildering succession of blurs. The blurring sensation makes my eyes ache and my brain tired." "Have you any other warnings of my presence?" he asked. "No and yes," I answered. "When you are near me I have feelings similar to those produced by dank warehouses, gloomy crypts, and deep mines. And as sailors feel the loom of the land on dark nights, so I think I feel the loom of your body. But it is all very vague and intangible." Long we talked at last morning in his laboratory, and when I turned to go he put his unseen hand in mine with nervous grip, and said, "Now I shall conquer the world." And I could not dare to tell him of Paul Tichlorn's equal success. At home I found a note from Paul asking me to come up immediately, and it was high noon when I came spinning up the driveway on my wheel. Paul called me from the tennis court, and I dismounted and went over, but the court was empty. As I stood there, gaping open-mouthed, a tennis ball struck me on the arm, and as I turned about another whizzed past my ear. For aught I could see of my assailant, they came whirring at me from out of space, and right well I was peppered with them. But when the balls already flung at me began to come back for a second time, I realized the situation. Seizing a racket and keeping my eyes open, I quickly saw a rainbow flash appearing and disappearing and darting over the ground. I took out after it, and when I laid the racket upon it for half a dozen stout blows, Paul's voice rang out. "Enough! Enough! Oh, ouch! Stop! You're landing on my naked skin, you know. Ow! Ow! I'll be good! I'll be good! I only wanted you to see my metamorphosis," he said ruefully, and I imagined he was rubbing his hurts. A few minutes later we were playing tennis, a handicap on my part, for I could have no knowledge of his position save when all the angles between himself and the sun and me were in proper conjunction. Then he flashed, and only then. But the flashes were more brilliant than the rainbow, purest blue, most delicate.